Alright, what's up guys? I just got done watching an early screening of A24's new film, The Smashing Machine, starring Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt, written and directed by Benny Safdie. And this was honestly a pretty cool experience. I had seen Benny Safdie tweet out probably about a week ago that there is going to be an early screening, not just for the press or for critics or whatever, for the public. One showing at 7 p.m. Monday the 22nd, and luckily there were still very minimal seats left, but I was able to cop two, one for me and my dad. And the craziest part was, other than getting this awesome t-shirt, which everyone got in the theater, but Mark Kerr, the former UFC artist who this movie is based off of, has lived in Phoenix, Arizona for a while. He now lives in Scottsdale. So he was at my showing. The person that Dwayne Johnson is playing in this film was sitting a few rows behind me, along with Ryan Bader, who plays Mark Coleman in this film, who is also a former wrestler, UFC fighter, I believe. He went to ASU, so I assume he also lives in Arizona. So before the movie started, Ryan Bader and Mark Kerr both went to the front of the theater, right in front of the screen, said a few words. The crowd was going absolutely crazy. The audience loved them. Most of them, I think, were fans of Mark Kerr. I honestly had never heard of him before this movie, before the trailer came out. I don't even know much about UFC nowadays. I am a football, baseball, basketball guy all the way. But still, having the guy who this movie is based off of, this whole story, in the same theater as you, it's pretty cool. So The Smashing Machine just tells the story taking place between 1997 and the year 2000 of Mark Kerr's life. His relationship with his girlfriend at the time, future wife, Dawn, played by Emily Blunt, all his friends, Mark Coleman, his trainer, and just all the fights that he goes through when the UFC was pretty much just starting. And just right off the bat, I'm gonna state the obvious. If you've seen the trailer, if you've seen any set photos, Dwayne Johnson is absolutely phenomenal in this movie. It is easily his best role. He is absolutely 100% transformative, unrecognizable playing Mark Kerr in this film. They did a great job with the makeup, with the way he looks, just small little minor details to where not only does the acting stand out in just how into the character he gets, it's his looks and how they just completely transformed it. Dwayne Johnson just brings a certain kind of vulnerability to this role, a certain type of honesty, unfiltered. I mean, this story it gets pretty intense at certain times. I do think that it glosses over certain things. I think the pacing could have been better. I'll talk to them about that a little bit later, but what we do get, just having Mark Kerr in the crowd, the actual guy, it must have been really hard to watch certain scenes in this film just because of how real it is. He struggled with an opioid addiction for a while. His relationship with Dawn was extremely toxic in every single way. And the one thing that he did love, fighting, being a UFC fighter, MMA, he was never, he didn't lose for most of the time. This movie starts, he's always winning. Of course, he's going to lose eventually. How is he going to handle that? He says it towards the beginning to where that never crosses his mind. It never enters because he's never lost. So he doesn't know how he would react. And that becomes a major part of this story and where it takes him, not only with the addiction, with the problems with his relationship. And Dwayne Johnson really does just bring all that emotion front and center, just being completely out there, giving it his all. And when you cast someone like Dwayne Johnson, former wrestler turned actor, playing a role as an MMA fighter, UFC fighter, he knows what he's doing, and he kind of fits into this role sort of perfectly, especially in the fight scenes that we get in the ring, in the octagon. And it really was quite something seeing Dwayne Johnson in this role, when we're used to seeing him in just summer blockbuster after summer blockbuster. This is definitely not that, and he's gunning for that Oscar. It's pretty clear. At least a nomination. And as far as this year goes so far, it's just a little bit halfway over. I think he will be nominated, 100%. And then same with Emily Blunt, who plays his wife, Dawn. She absolutely will be nominated for an Oscar. Nothing really to say. It's Emily Blunt. She is also fantastic in this film. The two just play off each other extremely well. Extremely talented actors, obviously. But just like I said earlier, the toxicity of their relationship is pretty much a lot of this movie, or pretty much 90% of their relationship. We only see a few scenes to where they're actually showing love and they're actually happy together. We just did a lot of that cycle of love, getting upset because you can't handle your insecurities, or they both just have completely different mental health problems that they hold in that aren't really addressed, and that comes out in a bunch of different ways, especially in a relationship. And this movie definitely does get intense. The heights that some of these arguments reach, some of the heights that these characters' emotions reach, just come to a head, they collide, and it gets pretty damn dramatic at one point, specifically more towards the end, where my whole theater just let out a collective gasp. Now, with this movie taking place between 1997 and 2000, it's only 3 years of Mark Kerr's life, so it kind of sometimes at certain points just feels like we're missing something to where things aren't fully explained. The pacing and the editing just kind of seem a little off, like they're just rushing it a little bit, but that tends to happen in a movie, you know, rather than a TV show or a short series or whatever. You can only fit so much into a 2-hour, 2.5-hour movie. So there's definitely skipping around going on, and with that, I think a lot of the fight scenes kind of are just on the back burner. Like they're kind of just not really the main part of the story, when you kind of expect the fight scenes, his career in the UFC to be kind of the main focal point of the movie. I mean, this guy had a lot going on in his life in these 3 years that the small glimpse that we get to see. So at some point, the fighting, I didn't really care about his career in the UFC as much as I did want him to be sober. I want him to be healthy, not only with his life, but I wanted him to have a healthy relationship. Because the few fight scenes that we do get, I think some of them are intense. There are certain blows, certain punches that are being hit to where, you know, it's like, it can get a little bit intense, but I feel like the toxicity that we get when Emily Blunt and Dwayne Johnson are arguing with each other, when she's trying to get him sober, when she is just completely losing her mind because she feels like she's being neglected by him. I just felt like those scenes were more intense than the fighting scenes that we got. And I don't think it succeeds as much as a sports biopic rather than just a look in on this character's life, this real person's life in these 3 years, and his own personal struggles. The movie itself, however, the way it was filmed, the cinematography was absolutely incredible. I loved the way this movie looked. It was shot on 16mm film, so it just gives it that gritty, authentic aesthetic that this movie is going for, that it's about. And seeing it in IMAX, the 16mm film looked even better. There's certain shots in here. I mean, it's Benny Safdie. He did Uncut Gems. He's kind of almost to an auteur level to some sort of degree. So he gets a little fancy with his shots. It's also A24, so there's that whole aesthetic added on as well. And you can maybe say that it's close to being an art house film, just the way that it was shot. I do just wish the pacing was just tweaked a little bit, fits a little bit. Like I said, they can only fit so much into this 2-hour movie. Maybe make it 2 or 10, 15 minutes longer. I still think there would have been stuff glossed over. But with all that being said, overall, I do think Benny Safdie made a pretty damn good film. He directed the hell out of it. Dwayne Johnson, Emily Blunt are mesmerizing in this film. I'm not joking. They are absolutely incredible. So I'm definitely glad I got to see it early. Went to the early screening. This movie comes out October 3rd. I definitely think you should see it. It is definitely worth watching, going to the movies, seeing this for yourself. There's definitely plenty here to like, to enjoy, to appreciate. I'm gonna give this movie a 7 out of 10 for right now. But as always, appreciate you guys watching. Like, subscribe, comment. Later.